What happened was we went to the wrong corner to begin with, but we then started heading towards our home base, but got off course again by one track being on the rocks and one track being on the sand, and we actually missed our home base, and we ended up not getting back to our home base. We ended up just getting stuck. Something that I had meant to do before that round of competition was to implement an infinite loop, which would just have us continue going to all four corners of the home base, just not one corner each and then stop. But fortunately, the other robot didn't make it back to its home base either, and so we ended up with a tie.
In that first round of the finals, when we just stopped and turned out we hadn't put that loop back in to keep looking for home, that scared me a lot. But I mean, that can happen.
And so they said, okay, we'll redo it. If you tie again, then they're going to take the highest scoring loser. And so we're kind of nervous about that.
I think there was about 6-8 minutes between those rounds, and that gave us time to go back and put that loop in. And the second time we were able to make it back to home base.
That one was a lot more relaxing because it just performed very well. We got to the center line and got the black block. There was one problem there. They had an arm, and they kept trying to grab our robot.
They were throwing their gripper down on Lunar repeatedly, which we didn't like at all because it could rip off equipment. It could damage stuff.
They thought we were block, and they put their arm down, and man, they grabbed on right around the servo that we had that rotated our gripper mechanism, and it spun us around and got us all out of whack, and we were lucky to get back home that round.
We ended up picking up 3 blocks, and we were so off course that we were looking for blocks, and we came back to our home base, and I actually picked up the robot with only 3 blocks in it because they were stuck on a wall.
I mean, I just felt lucky. I honestly thought that the playoffs were just totally luck. I really didn't feel confident really in any round of the playoffs. I felt confident in the first rounds, but not the playoffs.
I was still confident, and I remember sitting there, we had dinner beforehand, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, we could actually walk away with the first place trophy. And for Mississippi State to do that 2 years in a row would be absolutely awesome.
We had seen their robot perform. They were faster than us, but we thought we had an advantage against them just because we always picked up 4 blocks and got back to our home base, and it seemed like the way theirs worked was they just ran around for like a couple of minutes and then came back with however many blocks they got.
The championship round was in a different room than in the other rounds, and we had never run a robot in that room, and the lighting was a lot different. So I was nervous because, yet again, they introduced more unknowns.
The room was lit such that we couldn't see anything.
There's so many different things that can affect all these different sensors that we have on our robot, and we've tweaked them to work under this specific lighting, under this specific building, and then they change it on the final round. We actually went in there and tested it, and it seemed to work fine.
And we calibrated a little bit for it, and there was all kinds of other lights.
I guess they wanted kind of, this whole head-to-head thing was more of a crowd pleaser than an actual, technical show what your design can do kind of thing. Final round, they were faster than us, so they beat us to the black block, which wasn't a huge deal because, we could still get 4 blocks and beat them, even if they had the black block. And so we just started going around getting blocks, and pretty soon I noticed our block sensor was not seeing blocks. I mean, we would drive right by a block, and it wouldn't see it and turn and go get it.
They started driving by blocks, and it was like, uh-oh, it's not seeing them anymore. And I guess at that point we knew the sensors weren't working anymore and that something was going wrong, and it was kind of like, well, I hope it runs over one.
When it started messing up, it was awful.
Lunar did not see any blocks out of its infrared sensor. Obviously, we weren't using the camera, so it didn't see anything from there.
We just kept let it going, and we picked up 2 blocks, and we're trying to pick up our 3rd block, and I noticed that our sweeper, that we pick up 1 block and it sweeps it to one side, we pick up another one and it sweeps it to the other side, and we pick up the 3rd one and it sits right in the middle. Well, somehow our sweeper had malfunctioned, and our 2nd block was actually sitting in the middle. And so when we were trying to pick up our 3rd block, there was nowhere to slide it because there was a block already in the middle.
We got turned around at some point, and we were hitting things, and their UAB's robot damaged us. It was just everything that could have gone wrong went wrong.
I know that before we started slamming into other robots, everything was working fine. And that at the banquet, like I said, the lighting was bad. We couldn't see robots out of our sight. And I think that had to do with the lighting. But even if we could, our storage tray messed up.
I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out why it had happened. And as soon as that started messing up, I started getting nervous.
We tried to pick it up about 3 or 4 times and actually finally got lucky and ended up getting jammed up on top of our rotating servo. And so we had 3 blocks, and UAB had gotten back to their base with 3 blocks. So there was 1 block still out there, and we could beat them if we could get that 4th block. But the problem was our sweeper had malfunctioned, and there was no possible way for us to pick up the 4th block with a block jammed in there like that, because there was no way that thing would have been able to rotate up. And so we ended up getting back to our own base with 3 blocks, and we decided to call time right then and there in hopes that maybe they had a pushing penalty or something like that. And ended up they didn't, and so they beat us, but because we each had 3 blocks, but they had 3 higher scoring blocks than we did.
Immediately after we lost to UAB, we took it back to the competition room in the same original settings and ran it. And it ran perfectly.
I still think it was the lighting, because when we ran it in the first room right after that competition, it performed perfectly.
I'm not sure exactly how to say how I felt. Like, I felt like that, maybe we could have tested the block stuff more, or maybe we missed something that we could have fixed.
This could have been the other robot hitting us at the same time we were picking up a block and it dislodged the block or something, there's a lot of things that could have made it go wrong. It was just a fluke accident. The lighting had nothing to do with our sweeper malfunctioning. It was just a fluke accident that we couldn't predict. We couldn't repeat, so there was no way to know how to fix it.
Just a fluke thing that happened, and I think if we run it again, even in the same conditions, it probably wouldn't happen.
We had an impressive robot. It was a very durable robot. Of all the robots that ran into it, grabbed it, hit it with arms, and even we got into the paddle wheel of the robot in the final round, which tore off a little bit of plastic. Nothing got damaged. Everything was fully functional after that. So I was pretty happy with that.
I'm happy with 2nd place. We got to the final round. Our initial goal was just to get in the top 8, because after the top 8, we didn't know what was going to happen. I was disappointed that we didn't win, of course, but 2nd place is still a lot better than 2nd place is still better than 30 other teams that were there, and so we got to show our robot off at the banquet that night and everything, and so I still think we represented Mississippi State well.
I don't know how important it was to everyone else, but it was pretty important to me because that shows how well our design worked and all the time and effort we put into it. I'm totally cool with 2nd place, and as far as we didn't even know how well they do with another robot, we did pretty well.
I'll take 2nd place. I wish we could have got 1st, but being 2nd out of, I guess, 38 universities is pretty good.
I think everybody was really happy with how far we made. I didn't realize how much people wanted to make it that far, I think, until the last couple of weeks leading up to the competition, because then all of a sudden people were like, I don't have any other life besides this robot.